So, I overheard a conversation among the R&D guys about a recent deal DRG struck with one of our top weapons suppliers. Apparently, Deep Core Munitions is looking into building onboard computers and electronics at a larger scale in the recent past, but things were shaken up by the failure of the Betsy unit's effectiveness on Hoxie's 4. Understandably, DRG was hesitant to purchase more automated equipment after the fiasco, and Deep Core left with a huge surplus of electrical and plasma-based components. Well, one thing led to another, and Deep Core ended up using a portion of the components to develop a new and affordable assault rifle that uses superheated plasma for its ammunition. Enter the DRAK-25 Plasma Carbine. You'll notice the gun is primarily composed of cheaper materials, the body being made of heat-resistant proprietary polyamide plastic compound that is easily shaped and perfect for the weapon's high heat production with sustained fire. Yeah, but you want to know how it shoots, right? Well, this thing can perform like a dream in the right hands, given that they are properly insulated. And since the guns are so easy to replace, you can get yourself new parts after every mission since they still have a tendency to melt. Plus, Deep Core is selling this stuff at a huge discount to DRG as thanks for not leaking the whole Betsy thing to the other buyers on the marketplace. Also, please don't touch the fan. It's not for show, as dinky and ineffective as it looks. Alright, first things first, let's go over the weapon as a whole. The DRAK-25 Plasma Carbine is an automatic weapon that fills a similar role as the Deep Core GK2, that being sustained fire. The major difference lies in the fact that the DRAK is a projectile-based weapon, meaning each round has a noticeable travel time before impact. This means that in order to master the DRAK, you'll have to get used to leading your targets effectively. It may feel off at first, especially if you're used to the other two scout primaries, but I'm sure you'll get your bearings soon enough. Or die. That can also happen. A good setup to shoot for before you have any overclocks for the gun, as my personal suggestion, is 3-2-1-2-2. These mods are great for those of you who are transitioning from a hit scan gun like the Scout's other two primaries and want more instantaneous round impact. The lack of heat control on the setup will force you to familiarize yourself with the battery heat and get you into the habit of firing in controlled bursts. Listen for the higher pitched sound of the thermal feedback loop as a cue to stop firing before you overheat. If you do overheat, as a little tip, remember you can put the DRAK in your pocket and use your secondary as it cools down. This means you can skip the animation completely, unlike magazine-based ammo systems. Once you get used to this, you can play around with the mods and find those that suit your personal style of combat mining. With the DRAK-25 trades an instantaneous impact, it gains a whole host of options for combat utility, which I hope the following builds will showcase. Our first DRAK build will be looking at the battery of the gun, seeking to fully optimize its capacity using dubious techniques. The Rewiring mod Overclock can return ammo to your battery during overheats, but will also reduce the total ammo and increase the overheat length. This converted heat energy will allow you to return spent battery power so long as you complete the burst, extending your total usable ammo far beyond the normal limits. Don't let the apparent low battery capacity fool you. You can get upwards around 2,000 rounds out of a full battery using this overclock with the ammo mod. The only stipulation is that once you start firing, you hold down the trigger until you overheat no matter what. This is because if you burst fire, you will end up losing ammunition that could have been recycled during the overheat. It goes against good practice with most conventional weapons with automatic fire, but once you get used to it, you'll feel like a gunner with how many rounds you'll be pumping out. The mods 1, 2, 3, 3, and 1 assist you in your quest for efficiency. High volume plasma feed increases the fire rate to speed up each burst, and increased particle density will give you more damage since ammo won't be an issue. You can take the increased ammo for huge returns on ammo efficiency with more total possible overheats, but it does get to be a little bit overkill. The Hot Feet mod gives you a small benefit to overheating, letting you create distance while regaining ammo. As an aside, this mod just straight up uses the metal parts of your boots as a heatsink. Pretty sure R&D picked up on the whole thing that the magma core floors speed us up when we walk over them. Didn't I say not to mention that earlier? Anyway, the armor break on Destructive Resonance amp is useful since sustained fire from your DRAK can be spent breaking enemies' armor if you don't have a good shot after beginning a burst. Overcharged PCF and Plasma Splash are both very usable here. I just prefer the armor strip function for how I like to use it, but you can swap this as needed. The final mod in Tier 5 is Manual Heat Dump, giving you the ability to decide to cease fire at 50% heat and force an overheat. With Rewiring mod, this means that you can stop firing if you don't have anything left to shoot and you're still in the middle of a burst. One of the more obvious upsides to this is being able to trigger your speed boost anytime you want, but there's a little subtle upside to this mod as well. Reddit user NotDoritoMan did a write-up about this, and with a lot more detail, and it was extremely helpful for understanding this mechanic. Wait, what's Reddit? Anyway, the long short of it is, overheating at 100% heat is very efficient with ammo returns. Manual overheats at 50% are quicker, but return less ammo due to the shorter overheat time. Paradoxically though, a manual overheat at the very last second before a full overheat will yield 73% ammo return from a burst as opposed to the normal 69% at a full one. This means if you get into the groove of it and get the timing down, you can get even more ammo out of the gun than is possible with merely letting the gun overheat on its own. I know, very gimmicky, but a very fun way to optimize your ammo economy. Think of it like an active reload, you know? With the setup I've suggested, it's possible to get around a whopping 1700 shots on a full battery, assuming you have car-like reflexes. The secondary weapon I like to take here is a variant of the boomstick that I had in my old Scout Builds video. The boomstick's config is 21313 with, at last, the special powder overclock. This overclock causes a shot fired midair to send you flying in the opposite direction, horizontally or vertically depending on where you fire. These mods are what I've found to be effective for damage as well as making it a mobility tool. Blow-through rounds will help with tightly packed groups of enemies, and high-capacity white phosphorus shells will ignite most anything you hit in 1 or 2 shots with a double-sized buckshot. Double trigger gives you the option to fire twice to make your getaway even faster. It's a great accompaniment to the rewired DRAK since it will allow you the freedom to reposition anytime you're overheating and still function as a damage dealer in a pinch. Now, this setup is my favorite, but I will admit that I don't spam shotgun jumps, and I'm a bit obsessed with reloading my guns myself, so for a more mobility and ammo focused version of the same overclock, go for 21231. That'll let you spam the jump as many times as you want and automatically reload in your pocket so you're never caught hurtling through the air with no way to break the fall. Most of the time. Having insanely good ammo economy is nice, but why would you want that? Especially when you have other options that will deal more damage. Well, the sheer efficiency of this setup will allow you to potentially skip resupply nodes, allowing your team to access more. This is a niche use, but incredibly powerful when you're, say, in the middle of a deep dive with multiple defense objectives and no shields. Your gunner can spam shields and take more resupply if needed, knowing he won't be hurting your ammo reserves, which can be very useful in a dire situation. That, and the fact that being able to fire with reckless abandon in Scout is liberating. Give it a try. If you've seen my video on the gunner's aggressive venting tier 5 mod, then you're no stranger to this overclock's ability. R&D did Scouts a solid by providing the same capability to them through the aggressive venting overclock. Yeah, it's not a mod this time. The ability is so powerful that it completely voids the warranty on the weapon, but it's oh so worth it. When the DRAK overheats, it causes a flash of burning AoE that also fears enemies close to you as well as quicker cooldown for an overheat. The mods I use are 11311, increasing the rate of fire and battery size, giving you speed on an overheat and the ability to electrocute and slow targets. Overcharged PCF is nice because any enemy slowed by the Electrify will be feared for a longer duration once you overheat, so it pairs really well together. The final mod in tier 5 is Manual Heat Dump, giving you the option to overheat at 50% rather than waiting for the full effect. Keep in mind, when you activate an early overheat, the effect will be proportionally weaker. This means the radius will be smaller, there will be less fire damage, and a weaker fear effect as well. It's still useful for turning away smaller bugs and killing swarmers, as well as activating Hot Feet for the speed boost when you need it. My secondary of choice here is the tried and tested Cryo-Minelet Zhukovs. This is the same config as in my older video, meaning they're set up for 11112, and of course Cryo-Minelets. They make an excellent accompaniment to the aggressive venting abilities of the DRAK. If you lead into a fight with the Cryo-Minelets and freeze as many targets as you can, the vent from the DRAK will be able to temperature shock and heavily damage anything still frozen without expending additional ammo. Best part of all is that you can control when this happens easily by keeping distance from targets you would rather not hit with the heat burst, letting you still deal increased damage to frozen targets when it's a better option, or even to avoid bothering another team member using Cryo. This build is very versatile and I especially like to bring it on objective missions such as Escort and Salvage. Being able to keep the swarm at bay by burning and fearing them every time you overheat is invaluable when you really have nowhere to run during these types of fights. It also gives Scout an option to deal with swarmers that feels almost effortless in practice. For that reason, this is my go-to build for Swarmageddon or Parasite modifiers. Oh, and this build pairs really well with cryo grenades if you hadn't figured that out already. Just remember, if you smell burning plastic while using this build, that means it's working. This next build is the absolute peak of what kind of damage the DRAK can push out without just exploding in your face. Most of the time. If you need to replace pieces on occasion after some use before, you're gonna have to replace the whole damn gun after the mission is over with this overclock. Said overclock is Overtuned Particle Accelerator, making the gun harder to handle, generate more heat per shot, and reducing the battery size, but boosting the damage to 17 per shot all on its own. The mods I personally like for it are 2-1-1-2-2, attempting to strike a balance between damage and accuracy to deliver the best performance possible. The way I have it set up is to offset some of the negatives of the overclock, primarily the spread, since getting more plasma on target will be well worth it. Tier 4's Plasma Splash can help you get more damage on targets as well, with the area effect on impact and the ability to partially go through armor, but the armor break mod in this tier is just as viable if you prefer to remove it entirely. There is an alternate way of configuring it, which is 2-2-2-2-2, going all the way in on damage per shot and making cooling even easier, but at the cost of very low accuracy. This makes the gun much more effective at close to medium range, if you can call it medium range. It's still pretty inaccurate, but it'll be nigh impossible to use at long range. Try both out and swap the tier 2 and 3 as needed depending on the type of mission you'll be embarking on. Just make sure to watch the overheating regardless which tier 5 mod you have on. Manual heat dump would give you more control, but I prefer to live on the edge with the thermal feedback loop, listening for the higher pitched sound to know when to cool it. The secondary here is a boomstick designed to round out your options depending on what you decide to take on tier 4 of your DRAK. For simplicity's sake, I'm going to assume you've gone with Plasma Splash and are therefore lacking in armor breaking capabilities. This boomstick is outfitted with 1-1-1-2-1 and the stuffed shells overclock. It will be your answer to the frequent overheats of your primary weapon. With improved stun, high damage shells, and the ability to remove armor, it covers its base as well. This is in addition to being able to reload in your pocket with the tier 5's auto reload. You can create a rotation of firing the DRAK to overheat, swapping to your boomstick to get 2 quick shots off, and swapping back to your DRAK just as it finishes cooling off as your boomstick is reloading in your pocket. This removes the pesky reload time and cooling time, and gives you a consistent flow of lead and plasma that even the toughest bug would think twice about approaching. If only they knew. This build isn't complex by any means, just a good old high damage firepower build that'll let you pump out damage and eliminate important targets quickly. I like to bring it on elite enemies and lethal bugs warnings where you will do well to get rid of bugs before they have a chance to reach you. It can also perform really well for dreadnoughts, albeit requiring you to be a little bit closer to the thing before you can ensure you're getting the most out of your shots. And before you ask, no, the rumors about this overclock being linked to an unauthorized company credit crypto mining module utilizing the processor on the gun aren't true, as far as we know. I mean, crypto mining couldn't add that much extra heat to the weapon, right? That might explain all those invest in DRAK coin messages I keep getting in my work email. Ugh. Ooh, I like this one. A DRAK build using the hilarious yet effective impact deflection overclock. It's a balanced overclock that causes shots to bounce off of surfaces and armor at the expense of a bit of your fire rate. Ignore the text that says it bounces twice. Someone in R&D department who's in charge of updating the text forgot to revise this one. Gerald. It bounces off a surface once and has a final impact on the next hit. This OC was combined with the mods 3-2-1-2-2 to ensure that you're able to manipulate the bouncing plasma with some degree of intention. Tier 1 increases shot velocity with the stronger particle accelerator, increasing the speed of both your initial shots and as well as the bouncing shots. This lets you estimate the destination of your ricochets a little bit better. You can go for high volume plasma feed to increase the rate of fire for a bit more DPS if you're okay with trading some control. Tighter spread with custom coil alignment gives you even more control over your shots, putting every one of them on target within medium range. Tier 4 is set to Plasma Splash to take advantage of the fact that your shots will splash both impacts, potentially letting you add an extra 5 damage from shots that hit the floor when they bounce up to your target. Tier 5's increased fire rate simply helps you pump out more shots, which is never a bad thing. Since the DRAK here is fairly standard aside from the bouncing shots, your options for secondary are very open. My choice was a pair of Zukovs using the gas recycling overclock. An unpopular option, yes, but one I'd like to take a crack at using since the alternative is really any secondary you feel comfortable with. Gas recycling gives you a significant damage boost of 5 per shot at the expensive cost of increased spread, slower movement while firing, and curiously, no weak point damage at all. Not being able to hurt weak points means you're relegated to body shot damage exclusively. Well, to attempt to mitigate the downsides and lean into its strengths, I've chosen the mods 2-2-2-1-2. Giving them accuracy, damage, and tighter spread helps focus the damage into the front target, while blow through rounds lets you pass that damage to more than just a single bug if you're positioned correctly. Tier 5's Get In, Get Out gives you an escape to use while reloading, circumventing the need for a quicker reload. A nice thing to have when trying to line up bugs. These knucks let you throw precise aim to the wind for a more frenzied style of combat, focused on unloading to the nearest target and dashing away with the speed boost. This freedom is easy to get addicted to, not worrying about where you're shooting, just what you're shooting. It also makes for a great way to pump out some damage when waiting for your bouncy DRAK to cool down. Also, if you or a teammate is using Cryo, the damage these do to frozen bugs is nasty. Before we're finished here, here's a tip for the bouncy DRAK to get the most out of its ricochets. If you aim just under the bottom jaw of a glyphid, in spider anatomy terms this is known as a Cheliserae, or Cheliserae, by the way, the shots will bounce off the floor and back up into it, giving you the damage from the splash as well as the direct hit on its unarmored underbelly, dealing some surprisingly good damage if executed properly. This works just as well on Praetorians due to their taller stature, and you can shoot them underneath their abdomen and sternum. Basically, as long as you can aim underneath it, you're good. Just make sure to aim near the legs and it's unlikely you'll miss. Your bouncing shots can also be devastating to whole swarms when shot in tight quarters where the likelihood of a shot impacting a target twice is much higher. For this reason, you will want to be kiting groups of bugs into tunnels and corners where you can do the most damage with the layout of the terrain. And if you have to, you won't be giving up too much damage by shooting directly at bugs either if the floor bouncing isn't possible at the moment. Also, if you want to feel cool and you're used to the bounce angle of the shots, you can always try corner shotting obviously placed or stationary enemies without showing yourself. You know, if you're cool. Hey you. You made it this far. I assume you're here for the good stuff, right? Builds that aren't approved, or even ones that completely ignore regulation safety guidelines for our equipment? I've got the good stuff right here. It's called Electroplasmic Loophole, and it's crazy good if you've got the stomach for it. Or shield, that is, considering this build utilizes shield battery booster, a dubious piece of equipment that increases your plasma's density damage and velocity significantly at full shields in exchange for some increased heat buildup and connecting the gun's heatsink to your armor's shield recharger. What does this mean? Well, in simple terms, it collapses your shield when you overheat the DRAK. As an upside, there is an increase to battery capacity and fire rate that's independent of your shield health, so that's good. Now, these seem like negligible increases, right? Why risk losing a weapon buff from taking mild scratch damage or even accidentally overheating in combat? Well, I'll let you in on a little secret. These adjustments have given the gun the ability to affect your shield's recharge delay. This means that when the gun finishes cooling, your shields begin recharging. So, if you go ahead and take the boosted converter mod on your armor to increase shield recharge speed, you can take what was a 9-second delay and reduce it drastically by using the gun's cooldown in tandem. To assist with this, I've used the mods 2-2-2-1-1. Tiers 1 and 3 are focused on giving you as much heat control as possible to avoid accidental overheats, since you really don't want to be doing that. Tier 2 increases particle density to boost damage since the overclock gives you enough extra battery to feel comfortable. Tier 4 takes advantage of the increased fire rate by giving you the chance to proc electricity on targets, further helping you control the crowd coming at you. Tier 5 is manual heat dump, a choice that probably seems odd since overheating your gun is not our goal. But remember what I said before. Shorter overheats lead to shorter shield recharges if used correctly. So if you heat dump on your own when at reduced or empty shields, you can get your shield back even faster. Just remember to avoid taking damage in this brief window. It'll reset the delay timer. It's more of a when the opportunity presents itself kind of thing than a every time your shield goes down kind of thing. Be smart about it. Our secondary here is a pair of Zhukovs using the custom Casings overclock. The increased mag size and slower rate of fire are combined with the mod's 22221 for a good balance of accuracy and fire rate, with the bonus to weak points and damage to electrified targets. I also like to take IFG grenades to open up even more opportunities for extra damage. The general way I play this is a cautious and careful approach that seeks to avoid taking damage above all else. The shield battery booster will force you to adapt your playstyle to pick safer engagement distances and positioning during fights, rewarding you with one of the most powerful damage boosts for the DRAK. Now, even if you are missing some shield health, the DRAK is by no means useless here. You'll still have the increased fire rate and battery, plus, you have the utility of manual shield recharge to get back to full power as fast as possible. If you run into trouble and need to burst something down but can't afford to use your DRAK at medium range, or even close range, swap to your Zhukovs and throw an IFG to get bonus damage to anything inside the electrical field. You can also switch weapons frequently, letting the Zooks capitalize on the electrical procs your DRAK will be doing. I strongly suggest bringing this one on team missions. Not only will running solo be a bit harder since everything will be aggroed on you exclusively, but you won't be able to take advantage of the shield link perk. Having that on you and being near a teammate will help you stay at full shields much more often. Oh, I guess you could also support your team by using the perk itself, you know. Up to you. This build may be dangerous and a potentially illegal use of the unapproved black market energy shield accessories, but it's rewarding and fresh for a scout who needs that little burst of pure dwarven adrenaline to get through the workday. I'm sure Carl would approve. If you think I've forgotten about the other two thermal-based overclocks, namely thermal liquid coolant and thermal exhaust feedback, I haven't, don't worry. Thermal liquid coolant is simply straightforward enough that you can just throw it onto any build, like the overclockless one I mentioned at the beginning. It'll do just fine. The ladder though, I have plans for the ladder, but that'll be in an upcoming video. Don't think I've forgotten about our rivals for a second. I'll keep you posted. I feel a little bit guilty, you know. So, while it may feel underwhelming and cheap when you first get your hands on it, I can assure you that the gun is only the latter of those. The DRAK-25 is capable of great utility and damage output if you're willing to void a few warranties and risk some first and or second degree burns to get there. The only thing you need to get used to is leading targets for a bit, and once you get over that hurdle, it can be your best friend on any mission, at least until you end up replacing it with another one after you've fried the internal components after pushing it to its limit. If you want to see me use the DRAK in increasingly ridiculous and dangerous situations, I'm always streaming at twitch.tv/Siirvend, just so you know. I'd also like to thank my patrons, A Cheese Wizard, Steam Stuck Dragon, William Barber, Axis Kronos, Ben, Lee Trott, Infraray, I Like Turtles, and the Flannel Man, for continuing to fund my Smart Stout addiction. Thanks guys. We only have one more new primary left to cover now, that being the well-received Hurricane guided rocket system. Just as soon as I can convince management that the 300 extra racks of modified rockets I ordered are worth the investment and definitely not for personal recreational use. Until next time, rock and stone. Okay, Betsy. I'm gonna give you one last chance to help me calibrate this hurricane, but you have to promise to not unload like you did last time. I know the system was designed for you originally, but please try to behave yourself.
Why not do it yourself? Oh right, you can't lift it on your own.
See, that's the attitude I'm talking about. You've gotten so sassy since we took you back to the space rig. Ugh. Just keep the safety on while I run some diagnostics, will you?
Oh, you mean like this?
Stop! Watch the board!
This rack is empty. May I please have another?
No! I'm gonna go find the gunner. Call maintenance again.
Aw, you're no fun. Goodbye.
Ha, good one.
Thank you.